zero breathing at a shockingly low price with a Meike 55mm, get de-squeezed with the latest Sony app update, and RED cameras are getting the Z mount. And that is just the beginning. Stick around. Hello, everybody. Hello, Lou.
Hey, Ido.
Hi, and today we're doing LensVid Talk number 31. So we reached this number, and we're going to start with something that we recently published, which is the article about what happened to the camera industry in the previous year, so 2024. And we actually discussed this in length in that video. You should really watch it if you're interested in the camera industry. I want to mention something that we didn't really mention in the video itself, and that is the different growth or not growth in different areas around the world. And we didn't have time to actually look at the numbers when we did it, because it was just like, I think, 1 or 2 days after the numbers were released by SEPA. The camera industry product association, or we actually talked to them, and they gave us some interesting comments. I'll mention them in a second. But what I wanted to mention about the different regions is that you can find this on the LensVid article, on the full article regarding this video. But what we discovered, or what we found out when we actually looked at the numbers, is that more or less the rest of the world, apart from China, didn't really grow. Maybe just a tiny bit. But besides China, but China itself, not the rest of the world didn't grow. But China actually grew by a pretty significant amount. So I don't remember if it was between, I think, 1.5 to 1.8 million cameras, something like that. I'll have it on the screen. But it's a pretty significant growth. We're talking, I know it in percentage, I'll write it on the screen, but it's quite a significant growth. And this is the second year that we're seeing such a big growth. So I think that between 2023 and 2022, like the previous year, we saw a growth which was kind of similar between, I think, 1.2 and 1.5 million cameras. So it's a huge growth. And now we're coming to a situation where China is on par with, more or less, with Europe and the Americas, because North and South Americas are...
In terms of how many they're buying, the market now.
Yeah, again, we talked about this. Is it?
It's not exactly buying, right? But that's what I meant, right?
Yeah, let's call it buying. So yeah, you're right. So China is on par with the entire continent of Europe in terms of buying cameras, etc., and both Americas, South and North, including like North America, Canada, Mexico, whatever, and South America, the entire continent.
Maybe you should say or instead of and. It's not they consume as many cameras as all of those continents combined?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This is the amazing part.
Wow. And
if this continues in 2025, China is going to surpass any region in the world, which is amazing. It
sounds like they do already, so maybe I'm confused.
In a way they do, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They obviously surpass any other country, but they're surpassing any other region.
Right.
For whatever reason, SEPA is like dividing the world into both Americas, Europe. Do you remember the rest? You have Japan as a separate region. And then you have, I think, the rest of Asia, which is not China or Japan, and the rest of the world, I think, something like that. So it's a strange division. I asked them about this. I actually talked to them. So they mentioned a few things. First of all, this division apparently comes from the Japanese government. So, take it for what it is. So this is one. The second thing, I asked them if they can bring more information. I think that they're missing in their statistics information about APS-C versus full frame, either cameras and lenses. They have one of them, but not both. I don't remember which one they have and which one they don't. So they told me that they will try and add this, probably not in the statistics of 2025 because they already started them. So I don't know, maybe we'll see next year, but hopefully at least in 2026 we'll see like both lenses and cameras division between APS-C and full frame. So that will be interesting. And I also asked them about why they're not adding more companies that are outside of Japan, because all of the companies that are currently listed are Japanese companies. So you have Nikon, Sony, Canon, Olympus.
But we don't have
whatever.
DJI.
We don't have DJI. We don't have Samyang. And we don't have all the lenses, the Chinese lens manufacturers, which are a lot. You have SeeU, you have Laowa, you have a million of those. So, yeah, they said that they're trying to add more. I'm not sure. I don't know if there is an admission, if somebody wants to join, if they have to pay. I'm assuming maybe it's a lot of money, so a lot of companies don't want to pay this. I don't know. But they say that they're open to adding more companies. So it's not coming from them other than, again, maybe the payment, but I don't know. So this is what I had to talk to them. Again, if you're interested in the full article and the video that we did, watch that. There are all sorts of graphs and all the information about what happened. I think it's kind of interesting. So the second thing that we have before we start going over some news is a review of this lens. And we've just been talking about Chinese manufacturers. So this is from Meike. This is a 55mm f1.8 lens from Meike. You also played with it a little bit. What do you think?
It was a lot of fun. Super light.
Yeah, it's a very, very light lens. We actually compared it to the Zeiss 55mm f1.8. It's, I would say, in some respects, quite a bit better than the Zeiss. The Zeiss is an old design.
Right.
So it's worth mentioning. This is like, I don't know, 10 years younger than the Zeiss. So it's not that surprising. I wouldn't say that it's across the board better. There are some areas where maybe the Zeiss is a little bit better, but it has the most surprising feature about this, and you can see it in the review. If you're interested, I really suggest watching it. But one aspect of it was that this doesn't have breathing at all.
Right.
So this is super surprising. I don't know how they did it. I wrote to them. They didn't answer yet. But anyway, that was really surprising to see. And this is not a video lens. It's not designed as a video lens. It's mostly stills, hybrid lens, whatever you want to call it. It's an autofocus lens. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I think there are a few things that I would improve, but generally speaking, and for the money, I think there was a time like the lowest that I've seen this was below $290, like under $300.
For a budget filmmaker or a YouTuber, I think it would be a great video lens, actually. For a real low budget choice, the clicks weren't that bad as I was moving through the aperture range. And
you played with the video. How was the autofocus?
I didn't see any issues at all. I mean, I didn't test it on a running subject coming towards me, but it stayed on tracking. It tracked, moving objects just fine. I also didn't really hear a motor. I expected to hear a stepping motor. Does it have a stepping?
No, the new motors are silent. I think that this issue has been completely resolved quite a few years ago. Yeah,
but for that price point, wow. Yeah, to have quiet autofocus.
No, that's.
I guess I'm old.
No, that specific problem has been resolved.
Yeah.
In terms of autofocus, from my experience, we use it on the A1, the Sony A1. So I tried in stills. I tried my kid running towards the camera.
Right.
When he came into the camera, I would say from a distance of about 3 meters, something like that, 2 meters, let's say 3 meters, it started missing some images.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't take it as a high-end sports lens. It's not. It's definitely not. But I would say that for other uses, again, as you said, like for video, like relatively slow subjects, we did it in here. And in a previous LensVid Talk, we used it, I think, in terms of like testing how it works, and worked fantastically well. We didn't have any issues. So that's cool. So that's the Meike 55 f1.8. You can check out the full review on LensVid. Let's start talking about some news. And we have a lot of Nikon news. We haven't heard from them in a long time. As you remember, about a year ago, they acquired RED.
That's right.
You remember that? So there are a lot of news related to that in different ways. So that's really interesting. The first one is, I would say, the first Nikon, I don't want to call it a cine lens. It's more of a video lens, but it's a dedicated video lens with autofocus. So it's really interesting. It's a Nikkor Z 28 to 135 f4 PZ, so power zoom. And this lens is, first of all, as far as I can tell, it's part of a new line. It doesn't have a name. I'm assuming it might get a name when they announce the second lens from this line. And then they will say, this is a line.
You know, there's two Sony lenses this reminds me a lot of. They have big zoom ranges. I think they're f4 possibly.
Exactly.
And they're kind of like clunky looking a little bit. Yeah, it's the same idea.
So exactly the same idea. You're right. And I'm not sure the focal length of the Sony's, probably very similar. I think 28 to something like 135. So again, this has a gold ring. So this is the first Nikon lens with a gold ring. It says like, it's like Canon L or whatever, I know, like Sony GM.
G, okay.
Yeah.
Or GM, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, I'm assuming. Or maybe it's a video line. I don't know. We don't know because this is the first one. So, and I don't think that they mentioned anything about this other than this is a gold ring. So
right. Find out what it means for yourself.
Yeah. But it has all sorts of interesting things. It has the PZ, the power zoom. It has a rocker on the lens, but you can also control it from a small
separate
remote
device, right?
And it has 11 speeds, so you can change the power zoom in different speeds. That's cool. I like this idea.
The customization options on here looked insane.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask about how you can. It looks like you can customize it while it's attached to the camera. So through the camera. I was watching the video.
In what sense?
It looked like you could go in through the camera's menu and change certain features, how they worked in the lens. Is that a new thing? Because I've never seen, usually you have to put a USB into the lens, not while it's attached to the camera, or maybe while it's attached to the camera?
I think it really depends on the brand. I'm thinking that lenses like Samyang does what you're saying. I have a Samyang lens which does exactly that. It has like a small mount which is USB connected to or directly to the lens and still I think that Tamron has an interesting concept where they have an app which somehow wirelessly controls that, which is cool. But I'm not sure if this is the first lens that can be controlled.
I was impressed, and it looked like tons of options, little menu in there, tons of things. That
I like the idea. Sony should get the same concept. Sony doesn't have this sort of like changing lens features, other than obviously the what the bottom on the lens does, which is like
the native lens, especially when it comes to Sony. If anyone should have that capability, it should be the company making the native lenses, because there you have the communication.
No, of course.
So that would be great to see that, right?
I agree. So what else does it have? Oh, it has something really, really interesting. You can, again, I think it's in the camera, you can set up, so it has like how much zoom does it have? I think like 5x zoom, something like that, 28 to 135. Sort of. So let's say it has 5x zoom. You can get it to 10, I think 10, by setting something in the camera, which if you're shooting in video if you're shooting 4K, it basically, if you're shooting on the Z9 or hopefully in the future, probably the Z8 as well, because they have the same sensor, you're getting like 8K cropped into 4K.
So it goes into APS-C mode. Basically,
sort of something like that.
It uses a smaller part of the sensor, maybe.
Exactly. So it punches in digitally, but it's streamlined. I mean, you don't see a jump. It looks like a digital zoom. Sony has this in a way with they have the
optical.
No, it's not an optical. It's a digital extra zoom that they have on.
But isn't it called optical zoom?
No, optical is optical. This is digital in a way. I don't remember. I'll write it on the screen how it's called. But regardless, so it's an interesting feature. I've seen it in action. It looks nice. The lens is expensive. as you would expect. I mean, again, what you define as expensive. I mean, it's obviously it's not a cheap lens. It sells for around $2,600.
Clear image zoom.
Exactly, you're right. You got it. So clear image zoom. Yeah. So anyway, it's $2,600. Really interesting lens, and I can't wait to see what else they are going to come up with for this mount. Now we have more interesting Nikon lenses. The first one is, or the second one actually, if this is the first one, is a 35 millimeter. This is a stills lens. I mean, you can shoot video with it, of course, but it's like the other one was more like a video lens. This is a normal S-line lens, let's call it. It's a 35 millimeter f1.2 S lens. So I don't have much to say about this. I mean, obviously it's similar to they have a 50 millimeter f1.2 if I remember correctly. It's fairly large and pretty heavy. But again, you would expect this from an f1.2. I've seen some reviews. I think that Petapixel did, our friends at Petapixel did a video about this. It has nice sun stars, although I wouldn't buy it for that. But, you know, it has them if you close down to about f16 or whatever. Again, this one is also, as you would probably expect from an f1.2 lens from a respectable company, it costs $2,800, so $2,800. Again, you want the fast lens, you're going to pay for it.
Is 17 elements, do you think that a lot for a prime lens?
Yeah, this is what it has. I didn't notice that.
Petapixel mentioned it, and they were a little impressed by that number, so I thought I'd mention it.
No, it's very impressive. Really? Yeah. Wow, that's
I double-checked
tremendous
it,
number.
17, yeah.
This is something that you would normally find on some of the zoom lens, exactly, on fairly long.
Because they need all those pieces to.
No, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, I've seen like over even 24, I think even 26 elements, but you're talking like very advanced, really long telephoto lenses. 17 for a prime lens is a lot. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, so again, we're staying with Nikon, and this thing is, I mentioned the connection with
RED.
With RED, yeah. So again, Nikon bought RED about a year ago, and I think this is the first time that we're actually seeing with this PZ lens that we mentioned. But what I'm going to talk about now is the first like really RED Nikon thing.
Collaboration.
Yeah. So what are we talking about is basically RED is adding or changing actually the mount on their cameras, as you would expect, to Z mount. To Nikon mount. So and the first two cameras that will get this are the Comodo X and the V-raptor. So these are two RED cameras, and you can upgrade your existing cameras. I'm not sure how this exactly works. I've seen some videos,
and they'll do it. Yep.
I'm assuming, yeah.
Yep.
I know exactly if it costs money, how much does it cost? I know. I don't have the specifics on that. If you have a RED camera, feel free to talk to RED and ask them.
There's a waiting list for it, I think.
Might make sense. There is also an optional, as you would expect, PL to Z mount. So, and there are two options for this. The first one is going to be a regular PL to Z. The second one is a PL to Z with a drop-in filter. I'm thinking this is for adapters basically. So for not adapters, for filters. If I understand this correctly, this is we have seen that in other PL to other mount adapters. It's really useful. You can put because a lot of Cine lenses are pretty big, and either they don't have a front filter, or if they do, you need to put in like a mat box with like large filters. In here, you can put much smaller filters. And you can still, at least in some adapters, I didn't see this one, you can still have like a V&D, which is cool. So it's a nice addition, and I'm assuming that there will be third-party ones as well. I'm not sure for PL, no, probably not with autofocus.
And supposedly, once you get is it the PL to Z mount?
Yeah.
Then you can maybe also connect to E-mount lenses, but what I heard was the E-mount fits within.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah,
smaller,
yeah.
so you can also switch over to E-mount, have
Z
that
is really
capability.
big.
Right.
So Z and the flange distance and everything,
Right.
it allows you to put as many. I'm not sure about. You can put EF, you can put E.
Because you're scaling down. You're not.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So you can do a lot of things.
That's exciting because now you're not trapped with one ecosystem. Now you can.
You can, no, that's for
really cool.
for RED users. It's a big news.
Yeah.
And another thing, they said that they're already working on improving the autofocus systems because you will be able to use Z mount lenses natively on RED cameras. Right. And obviously, I'm assuming that they're going to come up with more autofocus lenses that are really tuned up for video and for cinema. That could be really interesting. Yeah. Because, I mean, historically, I haven't played with RED myself too much, but historically, RED didn't have autofocus at all, or the new ones did have, but I mean, it's not on the level of like Sony or Canon or even Nikon themselves. So, you know, if it will come in like better tuned for RED cameras, that will be really interesting. So yeah, that's pretty exciting news, and I think that there is much more to come. Maybe even an NAB, and we'll see. So that would be interesting. We have this is up for Nikon. I think enough for one time. OM cameras, OM Systems, I think the name of the company that replaced basically or bought Olympus. Yeah. So they have a new camera, which is, well, it's a new camera. It's sort of like it's borrowing from some of their previous ones. I think it's much of the internals. I think it's called OM3, and I think much of the internals are similar, from what I've read, to the OM1 Mark II.
Okay.
For what it's worth. It's again a vintagey looking camera.
Lots of dials.
Exactly.
Like a Fuji.
Yeah. In that sense. And like an old Olympus, if you want to go there, that route.
Right. What am I saying?
Yeah. No, but what's interesting is that it's not completely plasticky like you would assume. It's like the top plate is metal, the bottom plate is metal. I think the middle is some sort of hybrid material, whatever, composite material. But it's a Micro Four Thirds. What else? IP53, so it's sort of water or weather protected. It has a new Tropix X processor, stacked BSI Live CMOS. I don't remember the resolution. I didn't write it. What else? It has fantastic stabilization, like more or less all the other Olympus cameras. A few things that I think Petapixel again did a video about this. I've seen two things that they mentioned. It has no grip, so it's like the front part is straight, not ideal exactly, and it has only a single SD card. So you know, it's more of a, I don't know, it's not exactly an entry. I wouldn't call it entry level. I know it is what it is, but for what you get, it's kind of expensive for, you know, like a single slot card. It's like $2,000. So I know. I know how many people are going to actually go and buy it. People who, I know, like the Olympus look and feel.
Well, it used to be also one of the advantages with that was that the lens ecosystem was a cheaper system to be in.
We haven't seen a lot of like Micro Four Thirds, new Micro Four Thirds lenses.
Correct,
right. But
so it'll be old, but it'll be bargain priced.
Yeah, I mean, look, lenses, between you and me, lenses are not advancing at the pace that cameras do. So, I mean, we see a lot of new manufacturers from China and stuff like that, but they're more catching up to what Japanese lenses have been doing for quite a few years. Most of them, not all, but you know, there are some innovation. Laowa is doing a lot of interesting stuff, and there are a few other companies, but But you can still work with micro four thirds lenses from 5-7 years ago and still get pretty good image quality. So it's not a problem. So that's the OM3. Now, there are two announcements in the last few days from DJI. And the first one is a new gimbal. It's called the DJI RS4 Mini. They had the RS3 Mini, and you don't have one of the minis. You have the regular ones.
I have one. I have the two.
The two, the
Pro.
The Pro. Okay, so the Mini, they had the Mini 3 and the Mini 4. There are a few interesting updates or upgrades for the Mini 4. I wrote down, so it works up to about 2 kilograms. I mean, for what it's worth, if you have a small setup.
Yeah, it looked very small in the guy's hand.
No, the thing itself is very small.
It almost looked like a cell phone gimbal. It was so tiny.
No, it's very small. Yeah. No, but I'm talking about the capacity.
Right.
So the capacity is, I would say, either a prime lens. I've seen people talking about even using like a Sony camera with a 24-70. I think it's a little pushing it, but I know I didn't test it, so I don't know. But with a prime lens, with most prime lenses, I think that you can manage, like if you're using a 35 or a 24 or something like that, it will work fantastically well. Maybe even with a 28-70, I don't know.
I do like the fact that they've made some smaller gimbals that don't need to have the massive capacity, because the one issue that I do have with the RS2 is that it's not the easiest thing to put in my book bag. You know, it's not the easiest thing to take with me, but these things are like 3/4 to maybe half the volume and size of my RS2. So you could just toss that right in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. There is a merit to small gimbals. There are some limitations. First of all, I'm going to get into what's new other than the weight capacity, which I don't think that it changed much from the previous generation. But going back to what you just said, there are limitations to being small. The larger gimbals from DJI, what you have and the newer versions, they dismantle. So you have like the handle with a battery and the head, the brain. And this opens up a lot of really interesting ways of using it. But if you don't need this, you just need the gimbal, that's cool. Now, what's really new? The most exciting thing about this, and I really want this to be coming to the, let's call it the RS5 and RS5 Pro in the future, is the tracking module. And this is really cool. It's a tiny, tiny thing.
It's a separate piece.
Exactly. You buy it separately or with a combo unit. And it's basically a small camera. I think not on this one. We'll talk about the next product, which has something similar. But it's basically a small camera which attaches using like pins. So it doesn't have an internal. It has an internal battery, but it charges via the gimbal itself. You don't need to connect anything. Just put it on top magnetically. It leaches onto the top part, and it tracks whatever you tell it to track. So it can track you, and you can put your gimbal on a table, and then you move in the frame, and it moves with you. So you don't need an operator. You can put it like if you're alone shooting yourself, even in the field. I think it's not going to go very far away. So I don't know what the distance limitation is, but for a few meters, it would probably work fine.
Right.
So that's really, really useful. Just for this, and you have all sorts of modes that you can change. So you can mark somebody and then go around them, and it will track him and keep him in the center, which is really difficult to do. Like if you don't have something like that. Have you ever tried going around something and
very difficult?
It's extremely difficult. You need to be a very proficient gimbal operator to keep him exactly in the center. And with this, I mean, obviously, if you're moving very rapidly, it won't work. Right. But if you're more or less like in the region, it will probably work pretty well. So I like this feature.
That's cool because even with cell phone on a gimbal, I have trouble doing that. And sometimes the cell phone's better at tracking objects than a regular camera. And I like the fact that they're taking sort of like this singular approach, like, hey, we can spend a lot of time trying to master all these different systems, or we can just kind of give you our own system and have it be easier.
I'm thinking the DJI is really the Apple of the photo world. They have we talked about this. They have such a huge R&D budget, and they're doing things which are like they're building their own ecosystem. I really love what they're doing. I didn't test this particular product yet. Again, I'm hoping that it will come to the RS5 and 5 Pro. Maybe I will get that and then we can try it. I can see a lot of potential uses for this. I think we mentioned something, or I'm not sure. We talked about this, but maybe not on LensVid Talk. There is the iFootage slider, which works with the DJI gimbals. So this can work with that, and that can be really, really interesting. But again, this is probably for the future because you need that to work with the Pro or the larger ones. So what else does it have? So it has this tracking module. There is something which I've been talking about for a really long time. It has this thumb screw which allows you to very carefully or very delicately move the plate back and forth for balancing. Balancing is one of the most annoying things about gimbals, and the basic thing which all the gimbals that I've tried have in common is that when you open,
the adjustment is too broad.
It's not broad. It's rough. It's not precise.
Right, it's not precise.
Exactly. So if you had like millimeter screws on all three axes, and you would just very delicately change them, it would be much easier.
Instead of always overshooting and coming back and overshooting again and coming back.
Which is horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like an automatic like balancing. We talked about this. Yeah. It doesn't exist yet. Hopefully it will exist in the future. But until we get that, at least give us this this screw. I think that this is only on one axis. I might be wrong. I didn't look too deep into this, but it's a start. I would like this on all three axes. I don't know, but it's cool. It's cool, and it's nice that they brought it. I would also like this to tell me when it's calibrated. So I think that what's her name, Juin, have on their big gimbal, the one that we didn't test and we have, it has like a green light when it's balanced. So that's nice. It would be nice if they had something similar as well, but I don't think that they have. And this is the second thing. The third main thing is easy vertical, which is really important. Now, one thing that I'm not sure why nobody is adding, why can you just flip? I know I need to look at the gimbal. Why can't the gimbal just flip the head to a position which is vertical?
It's a good question.
I'm assuming that I think that it can, but if it does, then it's limited in the movement that it can do.
Right.
But maybe it's enough for some stuff. Maybe you can be in a vertical mode like this, where you don't have to rebalance or do anything else, and you're a little bit limited in the movements that you can do, because
now I want to try the vertical mode on my RS too, because I rarely used it and I don't remember exactly.
Do some experimentation with this. That's an interesting one. So that's that. And in terms of pricing, 370 and 460. 370 for the basic and 460 for the kit with the module, and I think it's have an arm as well. So that's
pretty good.
Yeah, it's not very expensive.
That's less than half of what I paid for my RS2 Pro. I mean, different thing, but still. Yeah. I probably should have started with this.
Okay. So the pricing is really nice. The second product that they have is another gimbal, but this time is a phone gimbal. It's called the Mobile 7. So they've been making a lot of those.
Yeah. It's like almost more than one per year. I feel like sometimes they're releasing them so fast.
I honestly don't know, but a lot.
Yeah.
So what's new in this one? Again, we have a small camera module, which in this one, I think it also has a light. I think that on the RS4 Mini, I think it doesn't have a light. On this one, it does. So that's interesting. What else? So a small camera tracking module also works with the mini mics, the DJI mini mics, which is cool. It basically brings them into I don't know, the camera somehow. I don't know how exactly it works, but that's pretty cool. It has 10 hours of battery life and it can charge the phone.
I don't know if the previous models were able to do this. My Insta360 Flow can. It has a retractable, like boom, like basically the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I
can
think
extend,
it does have something like that.
which is cool. Yeah, this does. I'm just wondering if previous models, it might be a new feature.
Yeah.
And a retractable tripod at the bottom. It actually looks exactly like the one made by Insta360 for the Flow, which is not incredibly stable. It's very flimsy. It will work for a static shot when there is zero wind. But once your phone is on it, and that is really very, very flimsy, the slightest wind, your phone will act as a sail and the thing will just totter back and forth. It is better than nothing. I like having that feature on there. I mean, yeah. And it also gives you the ability to put it down. That's mainly what that's for, is being able to put it down. But yeah, it's exactly the same.
Okay, so that's the DJI Mobile 7 phone gimbal. I don't have a pricing. I'll put it on the screen. Let's talk about something from Godox. Almost every time we have something from Godox. I'm not sure if the previous LensVid Talks we had something, but this time we have. And I think in the next LensVid Talk, we're recording 2 in a row. This is recorded at about the 20th of February 2025. So they have a flash trigger, which is kind of interesting. It's called the FT433. Now, flash triggers, all the ones that I've ever used, apparently I didn't use the really old ones, use a 2.4 gigahertz frequency. Yeah. It works. I usually don't have any issues, but apparently I don't shoot where there are a lot of other users who use triggers, or maybe other. I do have a lot of
wedding
2.4.
shooters have to make sure that they're on different channels.
Yeah, stuff like that. So in this case, this is a 433 megahertz channel, which is very different than most of the others. Apparently more stable. It has USB-C, so the trigger has a USB-C, TTL, high-speed sync up to 1 to 8,000, and Bluetooth support, which is actually, this is one of the things that I'm really excited about, because I don't think that I will ever use this, but I want older triggers to have Bluetooth support. And for some reason, the small one that we're currently testing, they released it about a year ago. It's called... I don't know, I'll put it on the screen. It's a really, really small one. It's nice. It has a big touch screen, like a fairly big touch screen.
Right.
And it's more than this, significantly smaller. I want a bigger screen, basically, but maybe a big screen, touch screen will be too expensive.
Is the Bluetooth support for
their app?
For the app, okay.
Yeah. And I think it makes so much sense, because sometimes your camera is way up. And then you can't play with the trigger. Right. You can't see what you're doing. So from the app is like, you not keep changing the flash. I mean, at least I in the studio don't keep changing the flash. I set it up and use it. Maybe wedding photographers keeps changing it because the situation keeps changing. So that's a different scenario. But for what we do here in the studio, I don't change it all the time. But when I sometimes do need to change it, and it will be much nicer to change it from an app. And the small one doesn't have an app support. This does, so that's cool. Again, it's less interference than 2.4 gigs. I don't have the pricing. If I find it, I'll put it on the screen. I think it's already available, but I'm not sure. Wow, this one is... the next one is really unique.
The SeeU.
The SeeU, yeah. It's called C, like seeing, and U. Well, the concept of this thing, I don't know if there is a video. I think I've seen only like shorts or quick videos about this. This is made by a German manufacturer called P&S Technik, something like that, with collaboration with, I forgot the name of the person, put it on the screen. I have no pricing for this, but what this does, it's a really interesting, pretty ingenious mechanical device, if you want to call it this way. It's basically like it's allowing the camera person to shoot. It's amazing for interviews or person talking to the camera. So you can do one of a few things. You can either put a camera below and have like a semi-transparent glass that you can look through it and then talk to the person. And the person, it's like me talking to you, but basically the camera is coming from here, but it's essentially coming from below.
It's a similar thing to what my Parrot prompter does with the reflection of the text off the phone, right? It's using a reflection off of, like, you can see through that pane, and it's also reflecting the text. But here, it's reflecting your image into the camera. So maybe it's a little bit higher quality reflection or image, but it's still using kind of the same principle, just differently.
Exactly. It can do. So the first one is just looking through it and being able to talk to the person at eye level, and that's fantastic. The second thing is that you can actually use a teleprompter. So you can shoot from below and use a teleprompter, or, and this is the third, like, really ingenious thing, you can shoot with two cameras. One wide and one tele, or whatever we want, but this makes the most sense, I think, through the same basically setup. So one camera will be from here, one camera will be from here, and I can shoot you both with a wide and with a tele. Now, you can say, this is what I was thinking initially, why would I even need this? Because I can shoot the same, like, let's say I shoot in 4K and then deliver in 1080p, or shoot in 8K or 6K and deliver in 4K. Then I can crop in. You can do that, but the perspective is different when you're shooting with a wide lens versus a tele lens. So the image, if you took, let's say, a wide angle and crop it in, versus tele lens, it doesn't look the same. Is it?
You don't get the compression.
Exactly. It's not that bad, but if this is important for you, then this is an interesting solution, and it can work with really, really heavy setups. I've seen really cinema lenses attached to this thing, so it's really heavy duty. I don't have a pricing for this. I'm assuming this is very expensive, but I don't know, maybe I'll write to them and see if, if this is even available, or what's the status of this product. But it's really interesting, and I don't know, I'll be happy to hear from the company. Hollyaland is a new product that we actually saw in IBC. Do you remember the Cosmo C2? We saw a prototype in IBC, and it's a really interesting product. We tested the Cosmo C1 about 2 years ago. I think Art tested it. It's a fantastic unit. We're actually using it one of them right now. We have 3 cameras. Each one is connected to a different wireless Hollyland transmitter. So I'm thinking that one of them is a Cosmo. I'm not sure, but it works very well, the original one. This one has some really interesting new features. The biggest one is that this is a 2-to-1 unit. So 2 transmitters into 1 receiver. So let's say that, here we have 3. So it won't really solve the entire thing in here. If it was 3, it was amazing. But if you're doing, let's say that you're shooting an interview, 2 angles, we just mentioned 2-angle interview. So you have 1 transmitter on 1 camera, 2nd transmitter on the 2nd camera, and then you have 1 receiver going into either 2 monitors or 1 monitor with 2 split screen or something like that. It's basically much easier. Is it necessarily less expensive than buying 2 separate transmitters? I know. That's a different thing. You would think that 2 separate transmitters might interfere with each other, but we are running 3 of them right now, and they're working fine. So that's not the issue. It has a very, very long range, 1,000 meters, I think 3,000 feet, something like that. I'm not very good at the conversion, but something like that. It's very, very far distance. it does have lower latency. Now, I have to say something. We tested almost like not all, but most of the Hollyland wireless transmitters. The one thing that most of them, at least I would call them the more consumer or budget-oriented ones, have in common is that they're kind of like high latency. They're not very like if you want to do focus pulling, I wouldn't get them for that. This thing's supposed to have, it's not zero latency like Teradek or whatever are claiming to be, but it is low. So they're claiming like 33 milliseconds, which is supposed to be pretty low. I don't know. If we get to test it, then for sure I'll see if it's. I'm assuming it's better than what we tested before, but is it good enough for focus pulling? We'll have to see. And it has another thing which is really interesting. It's called a FPS booster. So if you're shooting, I don't know why you would need this. If we're shooting this in like 30 frames per second, it could boost this to 60. Does it make any sense for you? And why would you need this? Can you think about the situation where you would need this?
About video game streaming, because that's where 60 FPS comes into play sometimes.
I think that you would use this for that, but maybe. I don't know.
I don't see that either.
No, it's a professional, like higher end unit. So I don't know.
Maybe you see some fast moving thing is happening all of a sudden and you want to
remember it's not going to record in 60,
right?
It's just viewing,
upscaling sort of, right?
I know. I'll ask Hollyland. I'm in touch with them. I'll ask them why,
maybe there's
in what
really
scenario
cool
this makes
that.
sense. I know. Maybe if you're shooting like car races, something like that, but then you will be recording in faster. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it has something to do with the two transmitters. Math.
I know. I have no idea what this is good for. It's a fairly expensive unit. I mean, again, it depends on what you call expensive. $1,300. So, I mean, compared to other Hollyland wireless transmitters, it's expensive, but compared to Teradek, it's nothing. So it really depends on what you're comparing it to. Tilta has a new matte box. You've been really interested in matte boxes, and I think specifically in this one.
In the electronic ND that supposedly goes with it or can be
used with it.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the matte box itself. It's called the Tilta Mirage Pro. I think that the Mirage has been around for a while, and this is the Pro version or whatever.
Yeah.
It's made of carbon fiber. It has 3 trays, or you can put up to 3 trays. You don't have to use all of them. It has something called hard mats. I'm not sure if this is like really common with high-end matte boxes. I haven't seen that, but you can write to me in the comments. You know, if other manufacturers have hard mats. It's basically like a. How would you define it? It's like a cutout, I don't know if it's paper or cardboard or something like that, which...
plastic that fits right around the front element?
Yeah. And I'm not sure what exactly it's supposed to...
Stop light leaks? That's my first guess.
Maybe. Maybe it also gives more contrast, but just a guess. I don't know. I'm again... If you ever use those, write to us in the comments. I have no personal experience with that, so excuse me. What else does it have? Oh, okay. So it opens to the side. This is a feature that a lot of the higher end ones have, which if you want to switch lenses very quickly, you just disconnect it from the lens, open it to the side, replace the lens, bring it back and lock it. Really cool.
That's not as a consequence of being on rails. It's a separate thing that it can open to the side.
It has to be on rails. Well, it needs to attach to something.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Does the rails no. So
no. There is a hinge that moves.
Got it.
The whole thing is connected to rails, and then it has a hinge that moves it aside. Obviously, you have to disconnect it from the lens, but that's just a turn of a screw.
But you can also, I think, attach this one to the front of the lens with the one screw, just like the small rig ND or matte box that we were using
without
as well.
the rails.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, probably, but for a run and gun.
Yeah, which is nice for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of a big thing, so I
Yeah.
know how much you would like to put a weight on front of the lens. I mean,
yeah.
depending on what lens you're. I mean, for example, PL mounts
Yeah.
are very, very robust. You can put whatever you want on them.
Right.
On a Sony, putting
Right.
like 3 trays of
True.
filters.
Yes. You're right.
I don't know if it's a good idea.
We'll see how much this electronic ND weighs. That'll be interesting to see.
I don't think
If it weighs more or less than a typical ND
not by much.
Yeah.
It has 2 options for VNDs. I mean, obviously it has all the regular ones that you can put on there. It's a 5 by. Do you remember 5 by what?
I thought it was 5 by 4.65.
Whatever.
Is that how it goes?
I think, yes, something like that. You could do like a regular VND, which is circular, like big one, 1 to 7 stops, or the new electronic one. And we have seen basically the technology manufacturer
Right.
in IBC. We talked to him.
Right.
It was a really interesting interview. He's from
Sweden.
Yeah, a really nice guy. And so this is one of 2 first products that use this technology. And this goes to 1 to 5 stops. It's a square or rectangle electronic ND or VND basically. What else? It's powered by USB-C from what I've seen. And it can work somehow. I'm not sure how it works exactly, but you can connect the nano follow focus. The what's its name?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the follow focus
Nucleus
is,
Nano 2.
Yeah, that might be for the regular VND. I don't know if that was also for the
For the
electronic
VND?
one.
I'm assuming that
I don't know what turns in the electronic one, but it could be.
I think it has a small.
Yeah, it does.
I think.
Oh, you're right. That
Yeah.
does. Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
So again, I don't have a pricing. I think that for the matte box itself, pricing is already determined. What I think both of us weren't able to find, but maybe we didn't look enough, was the electronic VND itself.
Right.
I'm not sure how much it cost and
I
if
wasn't
it's
able to find
available
it.
yet.
Right.
We'll have to see. But
That's the mystery.
I would definitely like to play with that. That's really, really interesting. So I know. The last one, the last news item that we have comes from Sony. They basically updated their control app, the monitoring control app. And I've seen a video made by, do you remember the name of the creator?
It's a British guy or English chap. And
Yeah, I'll write it on the screen. We'll
he's a
have
great
maybe
guy.
bring a short part
Funny
of his
guy.
video. You should watch it. It's great. So basically, the what they added to the app in the recent, it's a free app. In the latest update is basically you can apply LUTs to your footage. So it's supposed to be pretty easy. It works faster. I think the refresh is faster somehow. We actually use the monitor, the regular app, how it's called, Creator app.
Yeah.
Just now, and for some reason it was really slow. But maybe it's the internet in here. I don't know. But this one is supposed to get a boost to work faster, and it has a de-squeeze option. So if you're using like anamorphic lenses, now you can apply the de-squeeze in different levels. So that's cool. And I think that the multi-camera feature works better now. I can't test it yet. We're shooting with A7 IV and A1 and an A7R5. So only the A1 at the moment supports that feature. So that's a shame. I would really like it to come to the other two. But I don't know, maybe in the future. I think that is everything that we have for you. Thank you, Lou.
Thanks, Ido.
And as usual, don't forget to subscribe to LensVid and LensVid Talk. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye now.